My name is Hannah. I am 29 years old. 2 years ago, I moved to another country. It was not an easy choice. I had never left my home city before. I lived there my whole life. I knew the streets. I knew the people. I knew the language. But something inside me said, it is time to grow. I wanted more. I wanted something new. I remember the day I bought my plane ticket. My hands were shaking. I stood in my small kitchen. The sun came through the window. I looked at the screen. Flight to Toronto, it said. I clicked buy. I looked around my apartment. It was quiet. I was alone, but I smiled. I felt ready. I felt brave. I did not have a big plan. I only had one suitcase and a few savings. My English was not very strong. I was scared I would not understand people. I did not know how to get a place to live. I did not know anyone in Toronto. But I told myself, you can learn, you can try. My first night in Toronto was cold. The sky was gray. I stayed in a small room I found online. It was near a train station. I looked out the window. I saw people walking fast. I heard the sound of cars. It all felt new. I was far from home, but I was not sad. I was curious. The next morning, I went out early. I wore my coat and scarf. I held a small map in my hand. I walked slowly. I looked at signs. I tried to read them. Some words I did not understand. I wrote them in my phone to learn later. I went to a small cafe and bought tea. I watched people talk. I listened. I wanted to hear how they spoke English. I listened carefully. That afternoon, I went to the city library. It was warm inside. I found books with easy English. I sat and read. I looked at new words. I said them in my mind. One of the workers there saw me reading. Her name was Sarah. She smiled at me and asked, "Do you need help?" I said, "I want to learn English." She gave me a small paper with class times. "You can join," she said. I thanked her. That moment gave me hope. The next week, I started the free English class. It was full of people from other countries. A woman from Egypt sat next to me. Her name was Noor. She had kind eyes. She spoke slowly and clearly. We became friends. We helped each other. Sometimes we went for walks after class. We talked in English. It was hard sometimes, but we tried. In the evenings, I used a simple app to practice more. I listened to short English stories. I wrote down sentences. I repeated them out loud. I made mistakes, but I kept going. I told myself, this is how I grow. I never said, it is too hard. I said, it is new. After 2 months, I looked for small jobs online. I found one in a community kitchen. They helped older people and students. They needed someone to help serve food and clean tables. I sent a message to the team. I told them I was learning English, but I was hardworking. I got a reply. They asked me to come meet them. I was nervous before the meeting. I wore a clean shirt and jeans. I practiced what I would say. When I arrived, I saw a woman at the door. She smiled and said, "Hi, I'm Claire." I smiled back and said, "Hello." My name is Hannah. I want to help here. We sat at a table. She asked me a few simple questions. I tried my best to answer. She looked happy. She said, "Let's try for 1 week. If it goes well, we can talk again." I started the next day. It was busy. People came in hungry. I filled water glasses. I cleaned tables. I smiled and said, "Hello," to everyone. I watched how others talked. I listened and learned. I wrote new words on small papers in my pocket. Later, I searched the meaning. One evening, an old man at the kitchen said, "You are doing a great job." I said, "Thank you." That was all, but it meant a lot. I went home that night feeling proud. I was doing something useful. I was not just learning words. I was helping people. After a few weeks, Claire said, "You are part of the team now." I smiled wide. It felt good to hear that. It was not a big job, but it gave me more than money. It gave me a place. A small place in this big new city. My days became full. I went to English class in the morning. I worked in the kitchen in the afternoon. I studied at home in the evening. I was tired, but happy. I was learning something every day. One Sunday, Nora and I went to a park. We sat on a bench with coffee. She said, "You are doing well, Hannah." I said, "Thank you, Nor. You helped me too." We looked at the trees. The leaves were red and yellow. The sky was blue. I said, "I feel different now. I feel like this is home." She smiled. That night, I sat in my room and thought. I remembered the day I bought my ticket. I was scared. But now, I was here. I had friends. I had a routine. I was learning. I was stronger than I thought. Still, I had more to do. My English was better, but not perfect. I wanted to keep growing. I wanted to find new chances. But I was not afraid. Not anymore. I had taken the first step. That was the hardest part. And now, I was ready for more. Winter came fast in Toronto. The days became short. The nights were long and cold. But I did not feel alone. I had a coat, boots, and gloves now. I had new habits. I walked to class even when it snowed. I liked watching the snow fall. Everything looked quiet and soft. At the community kitchen, we served hot soup and bread. People came in with red noses and cold hands. We smiled and gave them warm food. I learned how to speak more in English. "Would you like tea or coffee?" I asked. "Do you want more soup?" "Have a nice day," I said. These lines many times, and each time they felt easier. One morning, Claire gave me a paper. "We are starting a small training program," she said. "It is for people who want to learn more." I read the paper. It said we would learn how to help manage food, keep things safe, and talk to people in English. "Do you want to join?" she asked. I said yes. The training started the next week. It was not easy. We learned about safety, food rules, and basic service words. There were tests. I studied every evening. I wrote words in my notebook. I asked Noor to help me understand. We met at the library and read the notes together. After 4 weeks, I passed the test. Claire smiled and gave me a small card. "You finished your training," she said. I looked at the card. It had my name and a stamp on it. I felt proud. This was the first paper I earned in my new country. With that card, I could now help more at the kitchen. I served at the counter. I gave out food and took small notes. I answered simple questions. One day, a woman asked me, "How long have you lived in Toronto?" I said, "Almost 4 months." She said, "You speak well?" I smiled and said, "I try every day." That small moment stayed in my heart. Outside work, I started doing something new. I joined a free walking group in my area. Every Saturday, we met at a park and walked together. The leader's name was Helen. She was friendly and full of energy. She said, "Walking is not just for health. It's also for meeting people." We walked in groups of 10 or 12. Some people talked a lot. Some walked quietly. I liked listening. I learned new words. One woman talked about books. Another one talked about her dog. Sometimes I said, "Oh, I understand," or "That's nice." It helped me feel more confident. One morning after the walk, Helen said, "Would you like to help with the group?" I was surprised. She said, "You can help greet people. You can help new walkers feel welcome." I said yes. It felt good to be trusted again. Every Saturday, I stood near the park gate. I smiled and said, "Hello. Are you new to the group?" I helped people find their place. Some asked, "Where are you from?" I said, "I came from England." Then they asked, "Why did you move?" I always answered, "I wanted a new life. I wanted to grow." They said, "That's brave." And I thought, yes, it is. Spring came slowly. The snow melted. The air became warm. Small flowers grew near the sidewalk. I started to notice things. I could read signs more easily. I could speak longer sentences. I could write small texts in English without using a translator. One day in class, our teacher gave us a short story to read. It was about a woman who opened a small shop in a new country. She worked hard. She learned the language. She helped others. When I finished reading, I thought, this sounds like me. I smiled quietly. After class, Nor and I walked to the bus stop. "Do you think we can do something big one day?" she asked. I said, "Yes. Maybe not fast, but step by step." She looked at me. "You are different now," she said. "You speak better. You look stronger." I laughed. Maybe I am stronger. Later that month, I got an email from the city website. It said there was a job fair near my area. "Meet local groups, find small jobs, and practice English," it said. I told Claire. She said, "You should go. Take your papers with you. Talk to people." The job fair was in a big hall. Many people were there. Some were like me, new to the country. Some spoke English well. I walked around and looked at the tables. One table had a sign, "Local Food Team, looking for helpers." I walked closer. A man at the table smiled. "Hi," he said. Are you looking for work? I said, yes. I help at a kitchen now. I also finished training. I showed him my card. He looked at it and said, That's great. We have some part-time work. Would you like to try it? I said yes. A few days later, I got a message from them. They invited me for a short meeting. I went there on a Wednesday morning. I wore my clean shirt again. I brought my small folder with papers. The manager was kind. She asked, Can you work twice a week? I said, yes. I'm ready. I started the next week. This kitchen was a little bigger. There were more people. Some were workers. Some were volunteers. I helped clean vegetables, pack boxes, and write short notes. They liked that I listened carefully. They said, You follow rules well. Now I had 2 small jobs. I worked at the first kitchen 2 days, and the second one 3 days. I also still went to English class twice a week. My days were full, but I liked it. I learned every day. I earned a little money. I used it for rent, food, and sometimes something special, like flowers or a warm drink. One evening, I sat in the small park near my building. The sky was pink. I looked around and felt something new. I felt peace. I was not rich. I was not perfect. But I was not lost anymore. I was not afraid. I took out my phone and opened a simple English news app. I read about people who started with little and made something big. I thought, I can try too. I searched for online courses. I found one about food safety. It had easy English. I clicked Start. For the next 6 weeks, I studied online every evening. I watched short videos. I answered questions. I read the rules again and again. At the end, I took the final test. I passed. I downloaded the certificate. I printed it at the library. I held it in my hand. I smiled. This was my second paper in this country. Claire saw it the next week. She said, You can do more now. You can help lead small teams. I felt excited. She gave me more tasks. I showed new helpers how to set tables. I taught them small safety steps. I used simple English. I spoke slowly and clearly. I remembered when I was new. I wanted them to feel welcome. One day, a young woman joined the team. Her name was Emily. She came from another country too. She said, I don't speak English well. I smiled and said, It's okay. I understand. I was like you. I helped her every day. I said simple things like, This is soap. Wash here. Dry with this. She learned fast. One afternoon, she said, Thank you for helping me. I felt happy. I was now the helper, not just the one who needed help. Summer came. The city felt alive. Music played on the streets. People ate outside. I walked more. I spoke more. I felt more at home. One Saturday, Nora and I sat in a small cafe. She said, Can you believe it? We have been here 1 year. I said, Yes. And so much has changed. We smiled at each other. That night I went home and made a list. Not a list of dreams, just a list of things I had done. Joined English class, started 2 jobs, made friends, helped others, took 2 courses, led a small team, walked in a group, learned how to live in a new city. I read the list again. My eyes filled with tears, but they were happy ones. Not because I was sad, but because I was proud. I came with nothing but hope. Now, I had skills, papers, friends, and a place. A real place in this new world. And I was just getting started. One day in early autumn, I got a phone call from a number I didn't know. I answered carefully. "Hello?" A woman's voice replied. "Hi, is this Hannah?" I said yes. She told me her name was Laura. She worked at a local training group for new workers. She said, "Claire gave me your name. We are looking for people who have experience and want to grow. Would you like to meet and talk?" I felt nervous, but I said yes. The meeting was in a small building near the library. Laura was young and kind. She smiled a lot. She asked me about my time in the kitchens. I told her how I started, how I learned, and how I helped others now. She said, "We are starting a new food project. It's small, but we want someone like you to help." I asked, "What do I need to do?" She said, "Help plan, help teach, and help grow it." That night, I sat at home and thought. I looked around my little room. I remembered my first days in the city. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know anyone. Now someone wanted me to lead something. I whispered to myself, "You can try." I started with Laura's team the next week. It was just once a week, but it was different. We met in a bright room with a whiteboard and chairs. We talked about food ideas for the community. We looked at what people needed. We planned how to help. I shared ideas. I drew small maps. I used my own words. People listened. One of the other women said, "You explain things clearly." I smiled and said, "I learned to speak slow and simple." She laughed. "That's the best way." The project grew fast. We made small boxes of healthy food for families. We worked with schools and churches. I helped with the list. I helped new people understand the rules. I showed them where to stand and how to pack. One afternoon, Laura said, "You're not just part of the team. You're a leader now." I didn't know what to say. My hands felt warm. I looked down and said, "Thank you." At night, I told Noor everything. She smiled. "I told you," she said. Step by step. We sat at my table with tea. I looked at her and said, "What's your next step?" She laughed. "Maybe something like you. Something that gives me purpose." We were not just students anymore. We were women with new lives. By the end of the year, I had 3 roles. I worked part-time at the 2 kitchens. I worked once a week at the new project. I also helped lead a few food safety talks. It wasn't a full-time job, but I felt full inside. I felt useful. I felt ready for more. I started saving a little money each month. I didn't spend much. I cooked at home. I bought only what I needed. I told myself, each dollar is a step to your next door. I wanted to one day take a short course at the college. It was about food and community service. It cost money, but I was getting closer. That winter, something special happened. I was invited to speak at the same English school I first joined. They asked me to talk to new students. "Just tell your story," the teacher said. "They need to hear someone like them." I stood in front of the class. My hands shook a little. I saw the eyes of 10 new people. They were quiet. They looked nervous. I smiled. I said, "My name is Hannah. I moved here 2 years ago. My English was not strong. I didn't know anyone. I was scared, but I started small. And now I work, I lead, I teach. You can do it too." When I finished, one woman raised her hand. She asked, "Was it very hard?" I said, "Yes, but it was possible." That evening, as I walked home, snowflakes fell slowly from the sky. I remembered my first night in the city. I had stood at the window and watched the cars. That girl was scared, but she didn't stop. She walked forward. Now, I was not afraid of the snow. I liked how it touched the streets and made them white. I felt strong. In the spring, I applied for that short college course. I used the money I had saved. I sent my name, my papers, and a small letter. A few weeks later, I got the reply. I was accepted. I cried happy tears that night. The course was every Saturday for 3 months. The English was not too hard. I took notes. I asked questions. I stayed after class to learn more. I met people with the same dream. We wanted to grow, to help, and to build something real. After I finished, they gave me a small certificate. It had my name. It had the date. I held it in both hands. It was my 3rd paper in this country. But this one said something bigger. I belong here. Months passed. I still worked in the kitchens. I still helped with the food project. But now, something had changed. I walked taller. I spoke louder. I smiled more. Sometimes people asked me, "Do you miss your old home?" I said, "Yes, I do." But I also said, "This is home too now." I built a new life here, a life with meaning, a life with people who cared, a life with work that made me proud. One Sunday, I stood at the same park gate where I used to welcome new walkers. The sun was out. The grass was green. I saw a woman standing alone. She looked lost. I walked up to her and said, "Hi, are you new here?" She nodded. "Yes, I just moved here last week." I smiled. "Welcome. You are not alone.